and welcome to the Grindhouse. We are actually on episode 11, which we actually broke the 10 episode hump, which is kind of a good thing. So at least it means that because I think I mentioned this in a couple of past episodes, is that like statistically, if you're not over your 7th podcast at the time, you're probably not going to get over it. Hey, Dana's here joining us in the stream. So
what
welcome.
happens if you get over 700 or 800 podcast episodes?
Leprechauns come out of the mountains and grant you your wildest desires.
I can't wait for them to arrive.
My people.
Yeah, there you go, man. It's just that's the 700 mark. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about this in a moment. Actually, not leprechauns, but numbers and viewers and such like that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go around really quickly, and then we're actually going to look at a new bumper because I can't live my life without creating a new bumper. But this one is for an honest discussion piece, not for vanity or ooh, look what I did in Photoshop or Premiere Pro this week. So anyway, I'm JC. I am the host of Welcome to the Grindhouse, and I'll go around, just kind of let everyone introduce themselves. So, Catherine.
I'm Catherine. I run Epi the Tome, and you can follow me on Twitter at the handle below if you can see it. I know my camera's being weird.
Okay, we can definitely see your handle. Pat.
Yay.
Hey, my name is Pat O. I put the UTI in cutie, and you can find me on Twitter at Dr. X2112.
All right, that is an opening. And okay, never mind. I just entendre here. Terry.
I've got nothing to say after what Pat said. I'm just gonna let that flow. Just keep rolling.
Okay, and Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike. I play games.
All right, there we go. All right, Dana thought that was funny in chat. So, all right, so here we go. I got to go to video to actually do this. So here we go. And I don't even know if it can be read, but let's see how it looks. Yes, so this week in gaming, with all the weird Amsterdam sex clubs and the flashing their lights in the background, I need help. I think that's really what this goes to. But anyway, this week in gaming. So I'd actually kind of like to kick off this segment just to kind of talk about what did we do this week, or what are we going to be doing this upcoming week in the gaming sphere. So I don't know. I'll go start with Catherine. We'll go in order. So Catherine, anything cool going on in the world of gaming for you?
Well, if my camera was working, I could show you a new product I got that's related to Digimon. But
take me off the screen so you'll have 4, and let her do that. I'm going to adjust my camera anyway, so that way she can have movement and I can adjust my camera.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
So I got this new thing, and I know you can't see it because of the light, but it's like a VPET watch thing. It's like a Fitbit almost, but with VPET. Yeah, it's something I got today. But in terms of gaming, I've been looking at the World of Warcraft tabletop RPG. I've fallen in love with it, and it's very, it's like. My group is very accustomed to 3.5 in Pathfinder First Edition, and so it's definitely not a huge leap to jump into, but there's also enough new stuff that it's worth looking into for them and diving in, and it also fixes a lot of issues with 3.5 because it kind of throws everything out the window and just keeps the little bits that it wants and then it adds more onto it. And so it fixes, Hellfire Warlock, which was the strongest class in the game. It fixes Knight drowning themselves into immortality and just all that stuff because you can't do those things, and it's great.
Yeah, I was going to ask what because I was going to go, oh, there's a new one, but no, because I have the 3.5 ones because I played Warcraft till I think I put someone in Blizzard's employee ranks through college, I'm sure, with all the money I spent on World of Warcraft. But the one thing that I found interesting about it was in the core book, there's no blood elf. It made me
Yeah.
very sad. I was like, but that's the class I want, or the race I want to play is a blood elf.
They are in the monster guide for World of Warcraft, which is, and like they say they're going to add a like race level to them in a future supplement, but they never did. But I'm pretty sure you could just take High Elf and slap it onto Blood Elf and it'd be fine.
Oh yeah. It's just basically dressing up an elf. All right, cool. So Pat, what did you do this week in gaming?
My wife for Father's Day got me Diablo 4.
Nice.
I was not gonna pull the trigger on it. I was going back and forth. I was like, this is either gonna suck and it's gonna be a waste of money, or it's gonna be awesome and it's gonna be a waste of time. And I didn't really want either one of those. And then she was like, so if I buy you this, like, you're not gonna leave the house, like you'll just kind of sit in one spot for like about a month and a half. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, you're not gonna bother me or anything. And so that I couldn't have sold it better myself. So yeah, we went that route. I really Dredge, which was like kind of a smaller indie Lovecraftian and fishing game. And I really liked that. And I was like, okay, so that was something that like I had a good video gaming experience with. And really I'm just kind of like waiting for Starfield, which is the Bethesda their new IP that's not Elder Scrolls and not Fallout, you know, and that's not coming till September. So I guess this kind of will fill the spot in between where I'll probably play Diablo for the summer and then probably be done with it around when Starfield drops. But I did not do any of the crazy pre-orders for Starfield, which is like fucking $300 collector's editions where you get a watch and shit and like all that stuff. I'm not going to go that route. I'm not.
Anything in the realm of tabletop gaming?
Yeah, I had one of my. I used to do a monthly D&D night at this bar by my house, and one of the players texted me this week and was like, "When are we getting together again?" And I'm like, "Oh, so I really do need to at least put the some of the finishing touches on the Tomb of Kevin McAllister just to play test it. Probably in July that'll happen. So." I think that'll be my two creative projects. I'll sit on my ass to play Diablo 4, and then when I do feel like producing something, if it's not one of my bazillion podcasts, it'll be that, and just kind of slap some shingles on that shit so I can just get it out the door and get it in front of people, you know.
All right,
So,
cool. Mike?
Awesome. Let's see. So I put my campaign, if you've seen what I was working on, I've been working on my home world. I put that now on the back burner. I have been preparing to run a one-shot of Spelljammer. Now, for those of you that are not familiar, Spelljammer came out in 1989. It was the second edition version. It's D&D in space. However, slight twist on it. It's not really sci-fi. A lot of people expect some kind of sci-fi aspect or element to it. And with the interesting thing about Spelljammer is they really did preserve the high fantasy, and they really avoided not dropping sci-fi into the game. So I was very excited to pick up the books. I went and hang on a second, I'll be right back. Let me grab the books off my shelf. So they came out with a couple books. The 5th edition, we have I don't know if you can see this, that's the Booze Astral Menagerie, depending on where you're from. Astral Adventurer's Guide.
Thank you for throwing some Midwest on that. I appreciate it. Menagerie.
And then the adventure called The Light of Zaxxus, I think is how you'd pronounce that. I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but unfortunately, I was underwhelmed. The main book, The Astral Adventurer's Guide, they really kind of gloss over everything. And the most important thing, which is the ship combat, was really very vague. They left it vague as in, hey, you're the GM. You decide on how things go and fight and fly.
It's like, no, that's your job.
And they give speed. They have speed values for the ships, but there's nowhere in the book where they mention speed, except for the stats for the ship. Anyway, they tried very hard. Let me retract that. They produced an updated version. I don't think they got it right. I'm hoping that maybe they'll release something in the future that might add to it. But yeah, the initial release was less than enthusiastic. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I always was fascinated with the expansion, and I'm looking forward to running it. So
Awesome.
What are you going to run? Are you going to do your own adventure? Or are you going to use that one that's
So
that's not a one shot. That's like a whole
this
thing.
actually this was designed to be played in like 4 or 5 game sessions, and I went through it, and the skeleton was good, but it really didn't have a whole lot. So I've
Ooh.
always been a person that kind of just does my own thing. I call it freestyling. And I looked at it and I said, that's nice. And so I took a couple things from it that I liked, and then I threw the rest of it out, and I sat down and started writing my own adventure.
The Moby Dick stuff is pretty cool. I cribbed that for one of the sessions I run at the bar when we were doing Spelljammer. It's like one of the early adventures where you have to kill time, so you go out and you hunt a giant space whale, and that's a great way to work in you get a random encounter table, and there was killer clowns from outer space and all kinds of shit, and that was the easiest one for me. You could do some space combat. You can get a taste of everything. I really like that one.
So yeah, looking forward to running it, and hopefully I'll have something. I'm going to have to sit down and come up with my own way of doing ship combat. I think is my final decision. I'm going to have to do some kind of down and dirty ship combat rules.
So, Mike, did that book help at all?
It did. James, let me grab that book. James was kind enough to give me a supplement called Airship Campaigns. They did have some rules in here, but most of the content really was focused on another world, a campaign world with airships, and it's really cool. Actually, I was like, "Ooh, this is a really cool world, and I wouldn't mind running something in this game." But their airship combat rules basically leans heavily on 5th edition. They're like, "Well, if you want to do air combat, you should use the alternate combat initiative rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide." And so, I mean, not to say that's, I was a little disappointed. I'm like, well, okay. But overall, the book's very interesting. Obviously 5th edition compatible. Artwork is wonderful, but yeah, it wasn't quite what I was looking for as far as ship combat rules go.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Terry back on. So prepare for freeze face in case.
Prepare for freeze face.
All right. So there we are.
There you go, Mike.
Oh, and look at that. Terry's got the same book. Awesome.
I do.
So Terry, what have you been doing in gaming this? Well, I kind of know what you're doing.
You know exactly what I'm doing in gaming, don't you now?
Well, yeah, but you can tell it.
We're playing Pathfinder Online. We're still playing around with the Foundry settings and learning how to use that VTT, which is fun and interesting and somewhat different than what we've done before, but I think it's moving along nicely. It's not that much gaming wise. I moved a bunch of bookshelves out from my house, which for an old guy, that's not fun, having to carry them down the stairs. And I moved a printer desk downstairs and had an unplanned rapid disassembly when it fell down the stairs and crashed into the ground floor. I don't recommend.
All right. So I will close with my week in gaming. So yesterday, and I ran the 7 Arches, which is part of the Gatewalkers adventure path for Pathfinder 2, which Terry is part of. And we're just having struggles with the VTT, Foundry Forge, or whatever it's called. It's a great VTT. Honestly, I'm in love with it because it does so many things over Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. it's just there's a learning curve because it's very DIY, and you have to learn a lot. And I'm sure once we master it, it'll just work smoothly. But right now, it's just like, especially casting spells, everyone's like trying to cast and go, well, what do I click here or what do I do? And it gets a little slow, but it's been fun, and it's actually a really good adventure path. And speaking of Pathfinder 2, this Friday, and Terry and Mike are in the game. I'm going to hopefully finish the game that I can't remember the name of it now. Oh, the Fall of Plaguestone, which is
Oh yeah.
Pathfinder 2e. It is a little railroady, I will give it that, but it's kind of a neat adventure, and I think it has the right amount of intrigue and combat. And then when you get to the end of it, it's like, oh my god, we're going to die combat, but it's it's good stuff. And the last thing that I'm working on right now is, so I usually play in every other Saturday game, which has been 5e. My friend runs it. He uses the Midgard setting from Kobold Press, but he wants to take a break and asked me if I'd run something. So I said, yeah, but I don't want to do 5e. So I'm going to run Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition. I'm using the Greyhawk Wars setting, and it's been interesting. It's almost like a walk back in time, trying to relearn how everything works, and helping just write a small mini campaign has been really fun. I will admit that Chat GPT has been my friend through this whole process, because it is an amazing tool as when you're trying to write a ton of material and don't have the time to do it. So you can just give it parameters. It'll create stuff, you edit it, and pop, you actually have some good stuff. But I'm also, as Mike was talking about skeletons, I basically took 3 adventures. Actually, not all of them are AD&D. One is an AD&D adventure. One is a Castles and Crusades, and one of them is a Adventure Conqueror King adventure. But I've just taken bits and pieces that were really good from it and put it into my main storyline, and hopefully it does work well. But that has been my week in gaming. All right. So with that said, let us go to our next segment. And I guess it's not really a news flash. I need to update the graphics on that. This isn't like, it's not like, oh, breaking news. It's stuff that's kind of, I think, already known. So and this might be of interest actually to Pat and maybe Catherine, is that so YouTube actually reduced the number of subscribers that you need to have in order to be monetized. So it used to be 1,000, and that's a very high number to reach, especially for the casual YouTuber, to get things out there, and especially since I'm not doing anything that almost seems the only way to get numbers up on YouTube these days is just to be controversial, like to be a pundit.
Yeah.
And that's just not my style, because I just, I want people to like me, and I don't want to be hated. So
you want to make the content you want to make.
Yeah, exactly. But it's 500 now, and we're at, after me putting I don't know, I don't think I felt that loved, but I put out a call saying, hey, this is what's happening with YouTube, and it's at 549. I think now I'm at like 559. It's like, woohoo! My outreach gave me 10 people. So
you said you were at 249.
Oh yeah, 249. What did I say?
549.
549.
Oh,
you are really bad with numbers.
And your math in that post, not even close. Not even close.
What am I?
You said you need
189 or something.
You said I've got 249, and I need 151 more or 159 more people. We're like, that doesn't even add up. That's not even close.
All right, well, fine. I'm not good with math. It's
But that's all tabletop gaming is. It's goblins
we play
with
math
math.
games.
Like,
We play math for fun.
Maybe that's it. You had ChatGPT write that post, and that explains everything.
Yeah.
baby. I wish ChatGPT would like subscribe to the frickin' channel. But anyway, that's kind of where we are. Is that and again, being monetized by YouTube is not like, oh my god, we're gonna like, drink Cristal and like, hang around in seedy bars with women of ill repute or anything, or men of ill
Aw.
repute or whatever. But yeah, but it's a few pennies, and a few pennies goes a long way. And I think literally it is like a few pennies. It's not all that great, but once you're monetized, then you can get sponsors. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we opened the show with like, what do they call that? Raid Legends opening?
Oh
where I
god, Raid
can-
Shadow Legends.
those weird Eastern European, like mobile gaming app commercials.
Yeah, and I mean, all I have to do is lie and say that I play it and show a little video and take up like, 3 minutes of studio time, and they actually apparently they their compensation for ads is pretty good. But with our whole audience of possibly 20, well, so I think the biggest we've reached, I think, is close to like 40 people on one of our streams, and that's after the fact. But Raid Shadow Legends is not going to be like, wow, you have 40 people, that's awesome. They're just going to be like, come back to us when you have 500 subscribers or more. So, and not to say that I want Raid Shadow Legends as a sponsor. I'm just saying it opens us up to sponsorship, because there's a lot of other sponsors out there. There's ones for beef jerky, coffee. I mean, I've seen so many different sponsorships out there that it's
I've seen so many like genitalia shaving ads, and it's just like, why?
Oh, we so need genitalia shaving ads for our income.
I mean, it'd be fitting.
No, those people are shady as fuck. They sponsored one of my podcasts and sent us the package, like the merchandise package.
Uh-huh.
And we did 4 weeks of ads, and we had a promo code, and we had people telling us that they were buying stuff and whatever, and we never heard back from them.
Oh wow.
And we only needed like 8 sales or something to keep the promotion going, and we just never heard back. We never heard yes or no. And they sent us what they sell on their website to be like hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise, so it's not like the whole thing was imaginary, but they just never followed through. It was Manscaped.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that was it. And then just and boom, then it was just over.
Well, the obvious answer is you need to start your own manscaping business.
Right.
Oh my god. What about womanscaping?
Sure. I mean, whoever, any port in the storm.
See, the thing is, if I was to write a manscaping commercial and then reach out to one of the communities that I'm close to create the commercial, we would just be thrown off YouTube. So I think it's all for the best. To basically, Dana, would you say Manscaped is pretty cool? Actually, yeah, I don't. I'm not going to go there on this. This show is rated PG until I start talking about hookers. But yeah, let's. But I'm sure there's other, like, I don't know, family friendly sponsors like cookies or something. I don't know. Well, but we'll figure it out. We're not even there yet. So the big thing is that, hey, if you know people, or people owe you favors, or people owe you money, it might be wise to just kind of go, hey, we do this live stream, and I won't break both your legs if you subscribe, and if you have more of your friends subscribe, it'll be more like a sprain on the next payment.
I think it's very optimistic to look at this as YouTube lowered their threshold for monetization, and instead of YouTube lowered the point at which they'll start advertising on your content. You know what I
True.
mean? That I think that has more to. I don't think it's about them like cutting the indie creator a break. It's they've lowered the bar as to when they'll start selling shit on your videos. And now it's
Yeah.
only 500 people. It used to be 1,000, and then they realized, you know what? We're leaving a lot of money on the table. So guess what? We'll start interrupting your content to sell me undies at 500 subscribers now.
Oh, you need to learn CPR? Well, here's a 30-second ad. Have fun.
Right. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me doing the conspiracy podcast, but that's my takeaway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Dana says that they still censor your comment. Yeah, they do. I mean, YouTube censors the hell out of you. So does Twitch.
Oh.
They just look like I've gotten actually violations on YouTube for something they swear was copyright material, and it wasn't. It was especially during our stream when we did the Curse of Strahd stuff. Now some of it was honest, right? Because I was showing old 1930s cartoons that I swear was public domain. And
I mean, it should be. Or no,
yeah.
I guess it's not quite 100
No,
years.
no, that's not public domain at this point.
There are some that are public domain, though. Very few. But we managed to get some that were claimed to be public domain, but they weren't.
Oh.
And we got strikes. And then there was a couple times where we played music that was Creative Commons, but they're like, no, this music was blah blah blah. And I appealed and I got it, but still, it's just annoying because when they put the strikes on you, they actually like either cut your content or mute it or do all kinds of other really annoying stuff. So, but anyway, the goal is to get 500, and if we're interrupted by underwear commercials, well, that's at least we're open to further monetization if we need to be. Also, it just kind of gives us more of a spread, and maybe more people start watching us on Twitch, and I can be hopeful. But with that said, I am going to create a contest. I haven't put it together yet because I just have a lot of various gaming things that I've bought and put on the shelf that are still like in wrap, and card sets and this and that and books. So I'm gonna cherry pick through and find some stuff that's like, yeah, I haven't even thought about this in a while, and just make some giveaways. So
nice.
if we reach 500 people, I'll go ahead and send out send it. I'll want to keep it to the United States, unfortunately, because I learned my lesson with back when I published Tales from the Fallen Empire, and I decided it was a really good idea to like include South America and Australia in the Kickstarter. It's it's ridiculous, especially like Brazil. Oh my God, because Brazil is not only super expensive, but then it has to go into customs there for like a month before they even get it, to make sure it doesn't have any American propaganda or something. It's just it's crazy. So to answer Dana's question,
hey, at least it gets more people reading your fucking book.
I guess, yeah, it's controversial. So how much stuff do I have? So let me see. The guest bedroom is filled with gaming stuff. My studio is game with stuff, and the garage is basically blocked with tons and tons of bins with RPG stuff. So it's kind of like to the point where Mary and I are just, my wife, we're just looking at a new house just to basically
store your stuff.
Yeah, to have basically so my games can have a place to live. So it's it's pretty ridiculous. But speaking of games, I don't know if I have a bumper for this. It's like, what? I don't have a bumper for stuff.
You always have a bumper.
I know. Wait, hold on. I have to have something here.
It must be somewhere.
We'll just use this one because it works. All right, now we're at games you should be playing or else.
I mean, I do like that bumper because I'm a fan of chess, but
Yeah, and I like adding the or else because it just makes us sound more legitimate and caring. But anyway, we're actually going to talk about two games, just because they're near and dear to some of the cast, and definitely just interesting to talk about. So, Catherine, I'm going to let you start off with the Black Hack, and
yeah.
what I will do here. Was there anything you needed me to share, or
I know. I just have everything on my phone because I've been at my next door neighbor / aunt's house for like a week.
okay? Then why don't I do this? Why don't we see if we can do this? Please don't show me this warning again. Yay!
It will always and forever.
All right, here we are. Let's do this. So we will
Yay.
actually, yeah, we'll share the system reference sheet here just to kind of give. But why don't you go ahead and start, and then any of us could definitely, join in on the fun. So, what is
Sure.
the Black Hack?
So the Black Hack is kind of like a callback to the original, like, the OSR days of tabletop games. It's very simple. It's very hardcore in places, but it's also very easy to roll up a character. So if you die, it's not like a huge deal. You can just quickly roll up another character in about a minute. It has some very interesting mechanics, and it takes some inspiration from 5e as well. And I know, like, a lot of people hear 5e and they like cringe a bit, but trust me, this thing is like what 5e wanted to be, kind of thing. So you roll, it's a d20 system, and instead of rolling a d20 plus your attribute, you just roll your d20, and you're trying to get below your ability score. So the higher your ability score is, the higher chance there is of you succeeding because you're rolling under it. And it's not equal to, it has to be below. And that's basically how the entire game plays. Instead of monsters rolling against your AC, you roll your defense against them. Armor is used to, instead of like increasing your AC or your mobility in this case, it instead can take a hit for you, which is extremely helpful in a game where you're probably going to be, close to death a lot of the time. Like, for example, Wizard has an ability that if they roll a 1 on their d4 hit die at level 1, they get a magic item, and so having that little extra bit of armor from like their cloth armor or from the shield spell, like, it can mean a huge difference between life and death because they're at 1 hit from death anyways. So it's a very nice system, very simple. Introducing it to your players, it's only like 16 pages. It's very quick and snappy to get into. It works wonderfully for one-shots. And is there anything I missed?
No, actually, you brought up some of the major points. So it is a roll under system, which is kind of nice. I mean, actually, that's a little bit of a throwback to early TSR stuff. So if anyone remembers non-weapon proficiencies, which were all roll under, and we're not roll over, so that is nice. The one thing that I don't know, and I guess I haven't really played it enough to see if it works, and everyone, you can definitely pipe in on this thought, is so like Catherine said, monsters don't you don't particularly, or monsters don't attack you. So it's not like in D&D where you're kind of like you have to now roll for the monster. It's pretty much if you fail your defense against the monster by your roll, the monster does damage to you. So it kind of removes a whole back and forth. It's almost just kind of everything is pretty much a defense roll to some degree. And I don't know, like
more on like the players and the DM can kind of like sit back more and like their mind is kind of taken off of combat for the most part because they only have to worry about like damage, and so they can focus on making sure their players understand the rules as opposed to making sure they understand the rules and the players understand the rules and they understand the monster and stuff like that.
I do like the armor rules though, just because the fact that you just have points, and once your points are gone, your armor is pretty much dead. I think it regenerates like the next morning.
You can try to repair it.
Okay.
During a rest, and then during a day's rest, you can, if you like fail to repair it, the armor is, or that armor die is broken, and so you have to like go to a proper blacksmith and get it repaired. But
And the wonderful thing is so it's not an expensive system. So honestly, it's around $5, I believe, on Drive-Thru RPG, and I could be wrong, but I think the last time I checked. And you can buy they do sell physical copies of it, so it's if you want something in your hands. But if you also just search Black Hack on Drive-Thru, or just even on the internet in general, so many people have done various modifications of this. There's cyberpunk versions of this. There is
a mecha hack, which is how I actually found Black Hack, because I found the mecha hack first.
There's also a Vietnam hack. There's a one that's like space opera. So whatever genre is out there, they've actually done this in that particular system, which kind of makes it neat. So anyway, I want to get everyone's opinion. So Terry, Pat, and Mike, how do you feel about like the ease of mechanics, or just everything being defensive? I mean, because everyone plays different games and everyone has different styles and likes, but I just kind of want your thoughts.
I don't really have a thought one way or the other about it. It sounds like with just so much or so little rules that it's going to be a lot of make it up on the go. Everything that happens, you're just going to have to be making it up as it happens.
And
well, basically, but I mean, if somebody say like goes, oh, I want to jump on a chandelier, you don't need to be like, oh, I don't know what skill that works for. You can be like, just okay, make me a dex test.
A lot of improvisation is what I should have said. And I have nothing against improvisation.
All right. So is that a not particularly your cup of tea, where it's
that is me being uncertain.
Okay. All right. Mike or Pat?
I mean, I see a lot of games like this they come across on Twitter, or I come across them just in through the ether, and they're kind of like these one sheet games, right? Where you're giving the very outline of rules, and it's a lot of improv, and there's supposed to be a benefit with it. I was actually just looking at one the other day called Dinosaur Wizards in Space.
Oh my god.
And there was another one about Honey Heist, which was you're a group of bears trying to rob a bank. You're like Reservoir Dogs, but with bears. But you're actual bears, and you have to you can roll into a frenzy, and like one of them will just go crazy and start mauling people and shit. And once again, it's like all D6. It's like super easy to kind of come up with the stats and shit. And I love those conceptually. I've never played them. I don't have buddies that are that into gaming where I could sit down and like play those with somebody. It's like, I wish I had more friends IRL that were around me where we could do that. But the only time I can get people together is if I'm like, we're playing D&D or we're playing DCC. And this is something that I would love to spend an afternoon checking this out. Right. But I don't have that many friends. So sorry. So yeah, I mean, does this sound cool? Yeah, but like the next time I get together with people and we game, would we do it? Like probably not, But that's half the shit on my shelves, so don't feel like I'm picking on you.
Yeah, so I remember I actually bought you a copy of Mork Borg for Christmas some years ago. Did you ever get a chance to?
Yes, we did. We did it when we do GaryCon, we rent an Airbnb. It's like me and like 9 dudes, and I ran Mork Borg that following year. And actually, I did the Goblin Grinder, which is the one that we did on your show.
Oh yeah.
So that way, I didn't even have to really. I knew it very well. So, yeah, I did that. And then what was there's another one that they came out with that was Mork adjacent. It was like Mork in space.
Oh, well, I know there's Cyborg.
No, it wasn't
And
that, but it was the same like doomed civilization is dying thing. And I loved it, but I just Mork is an exception. I have played that.
okay.
But
And Mike, what are your thoughts? Being someone who's actually played a lot of Crunch.
I think it's good. I like it. I like the idea that it's simplistic. I think this would be great for somebody who would like to get into role playing but might be a little intimidated by the game. I think if you have a group that really loves the story and wants to focus more on the story than on the rules, then this would be a great launching pad for that. That you can just sit there and focus on the story and the role playing aspect of the game, or at least that's at first blush that's what I see here. So yeah, I mean, this is so many games, so little time. This is something I'd love to sit down and try and play sometime. So
Yeah.
There is one thing I wanted to talk about as I just remembered about this. So I was looking at the Black Hack 2nd edition, and I had a few questions about it, so I started looking online in forums. And there seemed to be a lot of confusion with the rules, and I was confused by their confusion, because it almost seemed like people were assuming that Black Hack 2nd edition was not a completely different game from 1st edition, but instead more like an expansion on it. And so like people were mixing rules together with 1st and 2nd edition, getting really confused. And I'm reading the forums like, this answers none of my questions and makes me fear this community because oh my god.
But that actually happens a lot though, because if you there's another game that I absolutely love, and it's kind of in this vein, called the Index Card RPG. And there's 3 editions out, I believe, at this point. There's like a 1st edition, a 2nd edition, and they just released something called like the Master Edition. And all of them are basically just upgraded versions of the original game. But yeah, it gets confusing because you're just like, well, does this rule work? Does that rule work?
Yeah, I guess if you're not used to like I'm used to editions because like I grew up on 3rd edition, moved on to 3.5, then Pathfinder, then browsed briefly at 4E, then looked at 5E, and I went to Pathfinder 2nd edition, and so I'm like used to the idea of editions. But I guess if you're like brand new to the hobby and your first like encounter is the Black Hack, you might be confused by seeing Black Hack and Black Hack 2nd edition, especially if you look at the Black Hack site, which only has the Black Hack rules. And so like you might be looking at your Black Hack 2E rulebook and then also looking at the Black Hack website and being just really confused by the cross-referencing and like the difference in how armor works, because armor was usually more like temporary hit points or DR from like D&D.
Yeah, but the armor's interesting, and honestly, the one thing that D&D, and I know that anytime you bring it up, especially to old school D&D players, they're just going to say, "Well, armor and combat are just an abstract. They're not particularly meant to represent real combat. It's just because again, it's born off of a war game." But things like, I love a blade of armor. I really do. I wish
Yeah.
I'd love to see like someone create an alternate version for even like 5e and just turn armor into a resource where you're hit, it absorbs damage like armor's supposed to, not just not be the, because it gets ridiculous. And especially if you played Pathfinder 1st edition or 3.5, is that by the time you're 12th level, you're looking at armor classes like 30.
Yeah, my friend has an armor class of, I think, 36, 40 if he's, like, fully buffed. And most enemies hit, like, with plus 24 or so.
Pathfinder 2nd edition is the same, James.
Is it?
Well, true, but Pathfinder 2nd edition at least, like, balances out a bit.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, while you have 40 AC, your enemies are also hitting with like plus 30.
Yeah, so no, there is that balance factor where in first edition there was that balance factor wasn't there.
No, you could
So
like
the
blow
high
it out of the water.
Yeah, I mean basically at that point you're just writing stories for your characters to walk around in their godlike state. So it's but yeah, the Black Hack is excellent. You can, find it on RPG or Drive Through RPG and multiple other places.
Yes.
It's worth picking up, and honestly it's a great game. And if you're into that vein of game, we just mentioned York Borg, which is another one by Free League. And and I mentioned the Index Card RPG, which also kind of is in that same vein. And the Master Edition actually comes with like 5 settings built into it, and there's like a Weird West, there's an outer space, there's a fantasy. And one that actually I want to talk about on a stream in the future, which is just called oh my god, it's by DM Scotty, who is with Runehammer, and it's I don't know if I can see it over here on my shelf. Anyway, it's a D6 based game, and it's pretty cool. Honestly, I'd love to run it at some point. It also just has that same feel to it. So all right, well, awesome. Thank you for bringing that about. So yeah, if you're into like fantasy games, you want some that's really quick and easy, and that's definitely something to pick up and consider. The second thing I kind of wanted to bring up as far as games that I'm really really loving, and I will kind of preface that with I finally broke down and bought the the player's guides and game master's guides for it, which is the Star Trek Adventures RPG. So Star Trek Adventures is based off of the 2D20 rule system by Modiphius, which actually has a lot of games at this point. I think there's Mutant Chronicles, there's the Dune RPG, there is the Fallout RPG, there's the Conan RPG, Star Trek Adventures, all use this 2D20 system. And it's actually a fairly neat system, and I'll kind of go over it in a second just to give a high level thing on it. But Star Trek Adventures honestly has done really well. So I don't know, I think Terry, you mentioned that you played the first Star Trek game, the FOSSA one?
Yeah, I played the FOSSA one, and I played in a game with you in this setting.
Oh, were you part of the? Okay, yeah. So that was actually a really cool game, and you can actually find the stream on this YouTube channel. We had a couple of the writers for Star Trek Adventures, Kelly Fitzpatrick and Derek Attico, who write from Modiphius for Star Trek Adventures, on the show, and they played, and it was a really good time just because they're passionate about Star Trek, and also a little bit of jealousy on Derek, because Derek and I share a captain in general that we both absolutely love, which is Benjamin Sisko. And he just recently wrote the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko.
That's pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah. So it's that, and honestly, knowing his passion for the character, I want to read it because I'm sure it is pretty well detailed. And then Avery Brooks was just awesome as Sisko anyway. But I honestly, I am, if you talk about Coke or Pepsi person or Beatles or Elvis person, if you fall into the camp of Star Wars or Star Trek, I am definitely on that Star Trek camp. But I started off talking about FOSSA. Now, FOSSA was the first license. Well, it's actually theoretically not the first license system for Star Trek, because I think there was one other previous to that, and it was more of a war game than it was an RPG.
Are you talking about Starfleet Battles?
No, this one was. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was very short-lived. It was a war game, sort of like Starfleet Battles, but they called it an RPG, which they did to a lot of games back then. Which was like, hey, like the Masters of the Universe RPG, or the Dallas RPG. They weren't particularly RPGs; they were board games, but they just threw role playing game in there, I guess, because it was like, hey, maybe we'll sell more of these. But FOSSA was it was old school. It was all percentile based. Creating a character took, a lifetime. But then again, Traveler was also the same way back then. So I guess they were just basing it off of that. No, Dana, Prime Directive was actually the RPG based on Starfleet battles. So just
I've got a Starfleet battle story for you.
Oh, why don't you go ahead, since we're talking about Star
we were
Trek.
big playing Starfleet battles back in the 80s when I was in the Army. And one of the officers on the base was big into it as well. He was an infantry captain. And we played all the time. He and I were the Klingons. We were always doing the Klingons. And when he got out of the service, he went to work for the people running Starfleet battles.
Oh.
And I ran into him at a convention. I didn't expect to run into him at a convention because I hadn't known that he had joined their team. And so we just literally ran into one another. And I found out that as he was writing for some article for them, that he named one of their warships the Admiral Ter Mikan in my honor.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
For 15 minutes.
My 15 minutes.
So anyway, I just wanted to run and grab this off my shelf. So this is the FOSSA Star Trek box set. This is not the deluxe version, which I actually have downstairs, which actually came with a game within a game. Basically, it was a starship battle game, and it was broken up into different stations, and every character had this like map that they had in front of them, and you did it in the sense of, like the engineering can raise the engine power, and the captain can delegate where that's going to, and it was really interesting. They eventually did that in a box set for, I think, Star Trek 3 or something, but that was pretty much when FOSSA lost their license, is around that time. It was then taken over by another company called Last Unicorn Games, which I can't really talk to that one. My friend Pete Bryant was really into it, but I bought it and then I ended up selling it or giving it away just because I read it and I was like, it was the 90s, and it was one of those, hey, here's the core book, but in order to play it, you need to buy 6 splat books around the core book to actually get it. It was then taken over by Decipher, which actually I have all those books downstairs in storage, which was a more interesting system. It was D6. It played a lot like D&D 3.5, but it was just a 2D6 system. That also just had characters that took like 100 years to create, but it was a workable system, and it was a lot easier than, say, the FOSSA or the Last Unicorn Games. So the newest owners, as I mentioned, are Modifius, and so quick story, and I know it's you probably can't see it behind me, but on my shelf there is a giant Borg cube. Now, when Star Trek Adventures came out, they did a lot of promo stuff, and one of which was to sell a complete set, like the books and minis and all this stuff, and put it in a giant box that looked like a Borg cube. $600 later,
Oh my God.
I was the proud owner of this Borg cube. So that just shows how much I love the genre, the show, and this game. So I have the Borg cube, but these are newer books. And the thing is, like, they do sell splat books. Like the recent one I'm almost interested in. They actually wrote a campaign guide for Lower Decks. So if you're a fan of the TV show, the cartoon, that is available. And honestly, have any of you seen Lower Decks?
I haven't, but I want to.
Yeah, I've seen some.
It's pretty much like if you took Star Trek, written by the Rick and Morty person. It's really funny. It's very edgy. It's very adult. So it's not a kid show, but it's pretty amazing. And they actually just did a campaign guide for it. It is.
I was about to ask you if what's it streamed on, and I was like, oh yeah, we're not in the same country.
That's true. For what I understand, like things that we would see here on certain streaming things, you can actually watch on Netflix or Amazon
like
Prime.
We got all the Batman stuff on Netflix recently because we don't have the DC streaming service.
Oh, okay.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore. It moved all to.
Oh, it died?
Max. Oh yeah, the DC universe that migrated to HBO
Okay.
a while ago. I feel like, but I know Disney Plus, like in other countries, they don't have Hulu, so all the stuff will stream on Disney Plus, which is sometimes very odd for horror movies and stuff.
Yeah, so Disney Plus is like a lot of weird horror movies and very adult shows. It doesn't have Rick and Morty yet, but it does have like Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, American Dad, King of the Hill, stuff like that.
So, James, I think I know a solution to your problem.
What's that?
You need to go ahead and open an RPG museum so that you can put all of your wares on display and have people send you strange things to add to the collection.
And you can play them once in a while with like people who come by.
That's a really good idea, actually.
It would become a nonprofit, and lo and behold, suddenly you can get tax deductions.
Oh yeah.
Very true. So what I want to do, just before I get into the game, because it sounds like only like one of you've actually seen Lower Decks. I'm going to play the intro, and you can see the animation style, and the intro kind of says a lot to what this show actually
Be
is.
ready for your copyright strike.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, yeah.
So let's see here. I believe. Let's see here. Okay, share tab audio window. Okay, so I'm going to share here, and let's see if this will actually play.
If you ever need anything like cut out, by the way, I can do that in editing and stuff.
No audio.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no audio?
No.
Oh, here we go. I had to do a whole other. Oh, what the hell? What's up with this? Why is it?
There's 5 options for getting audio and video. Why? Because we hate life.
Let's see here. Okay, so if I go to share screen, I have share tab audio. Oh, wait. Oh, because maybe I need to do this. Hold on. Maybe I need to do this because I'm doing it in Chrome and I'm using that nasty Microsoft browser. Oh, got it. All right, here we go. All this work to show a show, and of course there's commercials. So let me get.
Don't you love YouTube?
All right.
My friends and I have discovered that advertising is even more aggressive when you watch YouTube on TV.
All right, so I'm going to do this, and now let's see if we can get, okay, and share. So I'm going to try this again, and we can see if we can go bigger here and try it again.
Yes to audio. It works.
So anyway, that is the opening, but you can just even tell from the opening sequence that just everything that could possibly happen to the USS Cerrito. It just happens to it, which is kind of amusing.
So, James, are you aware that season 2 of Strange New Worlds is going to have a live action crossover with Lower
Yes.
Decks?
Yep. I saw, and actually I saw the actors who are the voice actors for the characters who are actually playing both the characters, Mariner and I can't think of the other name of the character, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially since they don't take place in the same time continuum. So we'll see. But Star Trek is famous for time travel and quantum,
Quantum
irregular.
shenanigans.
Yeah. So Star Trek Adventures, where I'm getting, it took me a whole, I don't know how long to actually get to. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen again because I love sharing screens tonight, apparently. Let's see. So window, yep, here we go. So this is just to kind of give some context to what I'm actually talking about. So as I mentioned, it uses the 2D20 system. And the one really nice thing I think about this system is it's story gamey, but it still has like crunch to it. It's almost kind of if you took a D20 game and added some aspects of Fate to it. And it's kind of what it's like the love child between, I don't know, I want to say, a D20 system and Fate. And if they had a child, it would probably be 2D20 system. But the thing is for each of the different 2D20 games, like Conan is way different than Star Trek. Star Trek is way different than Fallout. And honestly, it's modifius, and all of this stuff is just really high quality. But simple is that you roll a number of D20s. It's usually a standard 2D20, as the system is called, and you're going to compare them to a target number, and you need to get lower. So, Catherine, just kind of like with Black Hack we're talking about, you need to get underneath your target number. And the thing is that if you roll a 1 on your D20, that is a critical success, and it is counted as 2 successes. Or if you have a discipline, which is something that you can take for your character, which is like something that you're really focused on, like something that you're really good at. If that skill also has a discipline attached to it, and you roll less than the discipline, which isn't usually high, it's usually like 4 or 3, but that'll also yield you 2 successes. If you a regular success, then there's failures. And the cool thing is if you roll a 20, it's not particularly critical in the sense that you're going to fall apart and die, but you start racking up complications. So like Fate, where basically if you mess up, the game master can go ahead and compel like horrible things on you, and then you have that negotiation process back and forth. So let's just say you're trying to align the warp core, and you roll a 20. It's not going to explode on you, but the game master might said, "Oh, well, you accidentally used the wrong tool, and now it's leaking plasma into into engineering." So there's just a lot of cool things that you can add to that. You gain something called momentum throughout the game, and momentum is kind of your fate points in a way. You can use it to roll extra d20s, because I think you can roll up to like 4 or 5 d20s if I remember correctly in one single roll, but it starts at 2 and you have to spend momentum in order to kind of build that up. There's also things like determination, which is also like a quality that you could have that'll automatically, and you can only use it I think once per session, but it'll give you an automatic 1 on a d20, which will, gives you 2 successes, so that's kind of nice. And then you have threat, which is the game master's version of momentum, which he can use to kind of mess with you. And it's a basic back and forth between momentum and threat, because it's kind of like an exchange of power, right? you're spending all this momentum and doing all this cool stuff. However, now the game master's sitting there and going, "Wah, ha, 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 I'm building up threat." So when it's his turn to like, do something horrible to you, he has the backing to do it. Also, initiative is kind of neat, and I feel that this initiative system was kind of taken from the old Margaret Weiss Marvel superhero game, where actually all the heroes start first. However, you go around and the villain will start last usually, but the way they want to set it up is that you go around the table, but if your players say, wait a minute, this feels like in this scene, this is when the villain's going to act, they can move up the NPCs into whatever order. So it starts off as all the heroes, but the heroes can say, nope, this is a good place where Harry Mudd's going to come through the door and, shoot phasers or something. It's kind of neat in that way. And then challenge dice are kind of like, I guess, fate dice in a way. Instead of pluses, you have the Starfleet symbol. And whenever you roll that's what you determine your damage on. So it'll be like how many of your challenge dice come up Starfleet insignias plus a modifier on top of that. And defense is done with the same sort of dice. So it's kind of successes versus successes, but in a completely different way. And while this kind of sounds, a little, it's not complicated. There's a lot to kind of remember. But honestly, I've run that stream, which, like I said, you can definitely check out. And I've also run it a couple of times at a convention and just with friends. And honestly, the game plays really smooth. Like it just kind of melds in, and that nice like resource management piece of it actually I think works really well. So those are the mechanics for Star Trek Adventures. Again, thoughts on the system? Anyone who's actually either played it or just listened to me ramble on about it? It was great, James. It was a perfect game. Why, thank you, Mr.
Amazing.
You've inspired me to check out Lower Decks.
Okay, well, hey,
Yeah.
that's something.
I don't know if it's a fair association, but the game kind of reminds me a little bit of Star Wars Edge of the Empire. But like I said, I don't know if that's a fair association or not. But kind of the back and forth, the exchange of power between the GM and the players. It seems similar. It seems like it had a similar element to Edge of the Empire, but
yeah, I mean, instead of D20s, Edge of the Empire uses all the weird symbol dice.
Yes, yes, they do.
Which and you got to sit there and count your successes and everything as well. And then there's like I forgot what they're called, but they're not successes. They're like when the Empire symbol comes up, then that's something, and then you kind of have to balance it out. One of the things I didn't like about Edge of the Empire is that ultimately it starts to feel like a tarot reading after a while, where the GM really has to interpret the dice. However, when it's ran by someone who actually knows what they're doing, it runs really smooth. So as Terry could probably attest to, when Jay Little, the person who actually wrote the game, ran it for us, it just went incredibly smooth. Not that I want to drop names, but yeah, he did. We did have the author of the game run the game for us, which was really fun. All right. So Pat, any thoughts, or Catherine, any thoughts on what I described in the system?
So just to make sure that I got it right, so the way it works is that as the players succeed, they're also building up like a bar of like things that are going to go wrong eventually.
It's a little bit of both. They create momentum, which is actually a bunch of resource points that they can do for things to go absolutely right. However, in building up all that momentum, they're also building up threat for the game master, which at that point is so, and that's where the real exchange of power comes in, because it's not like because if the player characters were to sit there and build up momentum to the point where they can just walk all over the
Oh, yeah.
place, then that's not really any fun anymore. Well, at least for the players, that'll be amusing for a whole session or two. But it's nice. So in the Margaret Weiss Marvel game, they had something called Doom Points. So you were able to gain you're basically able to gain this pointer, like resource points, to do all this cool stuff in the Marvel game. However, when you messed up, the game master would start collecting Doom and can use the same thing against you. But that was based on the failures of the players. Now this game is a little different, is that it's kind of a balancing act between the players gaining the points, so of momentum, versus the threat. And the cool thing about it, and this is what I love about this particular game, is that the players can screw themselves if they want to.
Oh, that's cool.
Because it's not a thing like, oh no, I better get this right or something bad's going to happen. The players can literally say, I'm going to give threat to the game master, or they can say, I want to have a complication right now. I want my spanner wrench to fall into the warp core, so there's a plasma leak in engineering. Like literally.
I like this setup a lot, because it for one thing, it's just like that comedic thing of like, oh, everything is going so right, nothing can go wrong now, and then something huge goes wrong. And it also works for kind of like a pity system of like, if the players aren't doing that well, the threat isn't going to build up as much, and so they're not going to be like facing as catastrophic of issues, I guess.
Well, that's why I think Lower Decks would work perfectly as a campaign setting for Star Trek Adventure, because the players can just make everything go wrong on their own. Like the game master doesn't have to sit there and go, how can I comedically make things go wrong in this session? The players who are really into Lower Decks know how the show kind of runs, and they can just introduce their own complications to make things funny or entertaining.
Extra experience for when you screw things up in a funny way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I honestly almost eventually want to pick up a copy of the book just to run a comedic kind of lower level Star Trek game. I think that would be pretty fun.
The whole complication thing reminds me a little bit of one of the mechanics in the Cypher system, where the GM can go ahead and throw complications at the players. Basically, he can give them experience that they can use to undo complications, or he can go ahead and throw a complication in on them that they then can decide if they want to spend experience points to defer or do it, or things. I'm a little loose on how it works because I haven't played it, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, granted, I love crunchy systems where the game master is kind of the god of the game, but things like this could be really fun. I know I can't really speak to the longevity of games like this, because ultimately I think unless you start creating stories that everyone is just completely in love with, I think it would just kind of get a little old after a while. But so for example, they do Fallout, which I don't know, can I reach Fallout from here? I don't even know where I put it on my shelf. It is somewhere on my shelf. Here it is. Ugh. So Modifius also has done Fallout, which is based on the franchise. Fallout 4 is very much in there, and I just love it because it has like, all the iconology and stuff from the game. But it's going to be a different game than Star Trek, because obviously where Star Trek stories are going to be more working together and science fiction-y, you would think that Fallout stories are going to be more about survival, and depending on the group, you might throw things around to screw the other players over, right? So it's and then they do a Dune version of it where I wish I could even have the higher brain function to understand Dune, sorry. But I bought it because years ago, Wizards of the Coast actually put out a very short-lived Dune RPG that if you own a copy of it, it's worth a lot of money because it was just only produced in like very small amounts. And actually, there's a joke between my friend Jay Libby and I that he says that when he dies, that's what he's going to bequeath to me is that copy of Dune, because I covet, like every time, the couple of times I've been to his house in Maine, I've always been like, oh, and he'll bring it out.
Show
and
me the box.
Yeah, it's not even a box. It's just like a book, but it is, yes. I mean, honestly, to find one of those under $500 is a pretty rare thing. But with that said, it's a cool game. It's worth picking up. Now, the newest version of it, they actually did it in a digest size, and it comes with a tricorder. It's made of cardboard, but all the components of the game are in a cardboard the original series tricorder that holds everything. So it's not that expensive. It's not like my $600 board cube. It's roughly more in the like $50-$60 range to pick up. But I'm gonna say if you have the money and you're a huge Star Trek fan, this is the game to pick up. You know, it's worth it. Or if you're just into the 2D20 system, look at Conan if you want fantasy. It's pretty well done compared to, say, the Mongoose version of Conan or the all right, Dave, thank you for joining us, man. It's always good to see you, and always appreciate you. But yeah, so I will leave that here. You know, I think sometime going in the future, we should just take our stream nights and just run a game with each other. Like just do
that'd
little.
be fun.
Yeah, I think that would just be kind of neat to do something like that. But it is time for our last segment. Let me find the video here. And
I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared of these segments.
Wait a minute. Are we going back? Is this going to be a manscaping ad? I need to know now.
No. All right, it is time for, well, it's the Thursday night movie review with Pat. So I am actually going to ask that I put, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and put you on hide. So Pat will be animated.
Bye-bye.
Mike, no. It's gone forever.
Mike. All right. And we all take turns at
Don't warn too much, guys, please.
All right. So anyway,
He dies so that I may live.
I will ask the question then. The one I ask every week, and I should know by now. Should I just play the trailer?
Synopsis first.
Okay.
Ahab, a man obsessed with exacting a brutal, violent revenge on the man who murdered his dad, joins John, an eager priest, and Twink, a hot-headed street hustler, on an epic quest to find and defeat the mythical monster known as Chris Fuckman, a.k.a. the Father's Day Killer.
Wow. That's
Roll it.
All right.
Is someone there? John? You. After all these years, you've come for me. There's a boy. Many years ago, he tried to kill the Fuckman. He left us a long time ago.
You know any dads go missing around here, motherfucker?
But this time, it's a grown man.
You seen your dad burn to death in front of you?
What is the fuck, man? Father's Day killer, Cannibal Man killer. Those damn reporters can give it any name they want. But I got my eye on you and the degenerate sister of yours, Chelsea. So you tell her I said hi. You must find this man, Ahab. You must find him.
Father of Flint sent me, and I've traveled across the world to speak to you.
I hurt a lot of people in my life, Father. And I don't want to hurt anymore.
I prayed every night that you would come and find me, but you never did.
I don't want you putting your life on the line over some stupid vendetta for the Father's Day killer.
Why not? You did. And I'm gonna finish what you couldn't.
It says that he that sees but one path shall stand in the way of the Fuckmanicus. Why? There's no time to explain.
Oh, glory to the fuck, man.
Happy Father's Day.
All
What the
right.
fuck, man?
So there you go. Father's Day. I thought it was a very timely to review this one with Father's Day approaching. Written and directed by the Canadian collective known as Astron 6. The film premiered October 21st, 2011 at the Toronto After Dark Film Festival and found wider release through Troma Entertainment. It can currently be found streaming on their Troma Now app as well as good old Tubi. So if you guys don't know what Tubi is a free movie streaming service that you can get just about everywhere. And it's got a lot of great trash on there, a lot of great content. The whole entire series of Red Shoe Diaries is on Tubi, unfortunately with commercials, but it is worth checking out. If you guys are not Tubi watchers, get on that shit. So Film School Rejects gave Father's Day a positive review and stated that this is what Grindhouse films should aspire to be. And the film was an early example of filmmakers making intentional aesthetic choices to make their films more closely resemble the Grindhouse films of the 70s. Astron 6 is notorious for this technique, incorporating it in mostly all of their full-length and short films. Another good one to check out from them is 2014's The Editor, which is a faux gallo. So what Astron 6, they did not invent it, but what they were like the early champions of is really not just writing and directing movies that would be at home in the 70s Grindhouse, but using After Effects to put in the like the little camera, the film scratches and pops and stuff, so that it really makes you feel like you're watching something that you would see on late night cable or an old shitty VHS. And it seems very commonplace now. It's almost kind of done ad nausea. But remember, this came out back in 2011, which still, was predated by Tarantino and Rodriguez's Grindhouse and Black Dynamite. They weren't the first people to do it, but they kind of did it the best. And we'll get to cover. I want to eventually move back to the old 70s Grindhouse movies, but this is a good modern day example of Grindhouse stuff. Father's Day is very ridiculously gory, with a completely bonkers third act that takes place in a stop-motion hell dimension featuring Lloyd Kaufman as God. I honestly love 90% of what Astron 6 does, and this is definitely them at their best. I meant to write more of this review, and I didn't, because I took my kid to see The Flash today. So if you guys want to talk about The Flash, we can do that. But if you want to hear a more in-depth analysis of this movie, listen to Y2K Movies this week, because me and my co-host are doing this for Father's Day over there as well.
Oh, nice.
So worth checking out. The Flash was good.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta say. I won't spoil any of the cameos, but there's lots of spoilers, and they're definitely like restarting the DC EU or whatever the fuck they call it, so that they can kind of get their ducks in a row moving forward.
They kind of needed to.
Yeah, they did.
I will say though that after seeing the second Spider-Man this evening, before the stream, that that blew me away so much that honestly I love DC. I don't know if it's going to like live up to just the complete mind explosion that the Spider-Man Across the Multiverse was. So, but we should do like a superhero episode and just talk about like DCU
champions and stuff like that.
I think it comes down to the character. I mean, I've always been more of a Spider-Man guy over Superman or even Batman.
I've been Spider-Man and Batman. That's my team.
Yeah, I don't, Superman. I don't know if it's fucking boring. Like I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that. Like, how are you? I challenge them. Go on.
My
I'm
friends.
going to bring Mike back on. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. See smiling faces, and Mike, you are back. So I take it you can listen. You were able to hear the discussion and see the trailer while you were off, or no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. But anyway, yeah. So we're just we're basically talking superhero movies and such right now. But you know, because you know, Pat saw The Flash, which I'm looking to see early next week, which I'm very excited for because you know Michael Keaton as Batman just is awesome. But my comment was that Across the Spider-Verse?
Yes.
Yeah, that visually and like it visually and just even the soundtrack behind it was something else. Like honestly, I was wowed from when it started all the way to the end. And yeah, my comment was, while I'm really excited about seeing The Flash, I don't know if like visually and mentally I'm going to be as wowed.
It's okay. So Across the Spider-Verse has a lot of emotional gravitas in it. It definitely it has weight, and the Flash does not have that. Very few movies in general have that. I mean, what the Spider-Verse movies are doing, like those are very well written, very heartfelt, emotional journeys, and that's always kind of been Spider-Man in general. You know, Superman doesn't do that. Superman doesn't have those kind of relationships or connections or conflict. He's just, you know, once they, I don't know, I don't want to get on a tangent, but no, the Flash has horrible visual effects, almost to the point where it's very comedic.
Oof.
I don't know what the fuck was going on there, but it does not, it is not as visually stunning as Across the Spider-Verse. It doesn't even come close.
Well, bad
what I mean?
special effects in the sense of like Bela Lugosi and a rubber octopus, or bad special effects?
Well, that's practical at least. This is the CGI version of that.
Oh.
The CGI equivalent of an Ed Wood movie. That's almost what it's at times when he does the time treadmill shit. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but like, yeah, they just, I don't know. And the director's like, well, we were trying to make it look surreal because he's traveling through time and shit, which I'll buy that to a certain extent. But you can't help but when you're watching it, like, Jesus, this looks like a bad cutscene from like an FMV video game from like the late 90s, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, you're like, holy shit. Like,
I'm not looking for any spoilers because I want to go see the movie early next week as well. But it's part of me deep inside really hopes at the end of the movie something happens and Flash will be played by Grant Gustin going forward. I just would hope.
Dude, for all of the fan service stuff that's in there, yes, they don't even touch upon him. And my wife and kid love that show. I mean, I've seen some of it; it's pretty good, but like, nope, not even. And there's so many different ways they could have just.
But here's the thing, though. Oh, Sam, go ahead, Catherine.
Sorry, I totally spoiled that for you.
Mine is a bit of a spoiler question, so I'm going to try and ask it in a way that isn't spoilery, because I know the Flashpoint Paradox story, and I guess I'm wondering, yes or no, does it like stick to the same kind of like themes, especially with like Batman, because I know in the trailer Batman didn't look like how he's supposed to be in Flashpoint Paradox. He looked more like how he is in like old school Batman movies.
I haven't read that, so I don't know.
Well, because in Flashpoint,
does he use guns? Is my question.
Oh well, I mean they play fast and loose with Affleck's Batman.
No, I mean that in like a positive way.
Oh no,
the Flashpoint Paradox Batman is interesting.
Yeah, because one, it's not Bruce Wayne, it's Thomas Wayne.
Mm-hmm. It's Thomas Wayne
in the comics.
And where Batman is scared of like using guns, his dad is instead like gung ho on guns because that's like the thing that killed his son.
I want to see a Flashpoint sequence where they go ahead and wipe Batman out completely and replace him with the Shadow.
The Shadow.
Wow, that's asking a lot, man. That's not even DC.
I know. If we're gonna wish for it, might as well go high.
Oh yeah.
So, but the point I was going to make though is that did any of you see CW's Flash? They did a Crisis on Indefinite Earths, like I want to say a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's a scene or maybe it's in one of them. But anyway, the CW Flash, and maybe it's the version of Flashpoint they did, if that was. But anyway, he was basically dimension hopping, and there's one scene where he basically ends up in a place, and the
movie
the DC,
Flash,
was in it,
yeah.
And it was a very brief scene, and there was this little bit of conversation going back and forth, and I was going, that's really cool because they tied in. But I think there was an episode where they had all the weird crossovers, like Lucifer was in it. They were in like Earth 666.
Oh god.
And it was like Lucifer and John Constantine with like Batgirl, and it was actually I liked it because they actually brought in like Black Lightning was in it. They had all kinds of callbacks to but CW kind of sucks, and they're pretty horrible. But all right, well, with that said, we should say goodnight. So I will go ahead and start the count off, and then we'll go ahead and end the stream. So JC, Grindhouse Media, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be able to have lots of commercials during this YouTube stream. So we want to reach 500 so we can be monetized. So if you can spread the word
every 5 seconds, let's go.
Yeah, or I'll just have to go to one of those shady, like those shady places where it's like, hey, we can get you YouTube followers for X amount of money. Hint,
no,
wink, wink.
Don't do that.
No,
don't do it. Don't do it.
I won't. But yeah, check me out on Twitter at Grindhouse Media, where I bitch and whine about most things. So anyway, Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I guess good night, I'm Catherine. Follow me. My handle's below. Say hi. Don't be afraid to DM me or whatever. And yeah.
All right, Pat.
Dr. X2112 at Twitter.
All right, Terry.
Terry Mixon at Amazon. Science fiction novels. Go get some.
All right. and Mike.
Hello.
Should we good night?
There we go.
Oh,
all right.
Good night.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you next week with some other rants and raves. And here we go.